أم كنتم شهداء إذ حضر يعقوب الموت إذ قال لبنيه ما تعبدون من بعدي قالوا نعبد إلهك وإله آبائك إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق إلها واحدا ونحن له مسلمون।
তোমরা কি উপস্থিত ছিলে যখন ইয়াকুবের মৃত্যু নিকটবর্তী হয়, যখন সে সন্তানদের বলল, আমার পর তোমরা কার ইবাদত করবে? তারা বলল, আমরা তোমার পিতৃপুরুষ ইব্রাহিম, ইসমাইল ও ইসাকের প্রভুর ইবাদত করব, তিনি একক উপাস্য।
Were you witness, all of you, in Hadara Yaqub al-Maut, when death presented itself to Yaqub, when death came before Yaqub? Now death is coming to Yaqub alayhi salam, state of emergency, whatever affairs you have to take care of, you take care of at that time. What's the thing that he takes care of? Is qala li banihi. At that time is when he said to his children, his sons. He gathers his sons and he's giving them final words. He's about to depart from this world. What advice does he give them? Ya baniya, inna Allah astafa lakum ad-din. Actually, ma ta'buduna min ba'di. I keep mixing the two ayat. Ma ta'buduna min ba'di. What are you going to worship after I'm gone? What are you going to be enslaved to after I'm gone? Now, interestingly, the expected question is, man ta'buduna? Who will you be enslaved to? Who will you worship? But he says, ma ta'buduna, making it more of a quiz. Because ma is, man already implies the answer in it. Ma doesn't. So he wants to start from scratch as though he's taught them nothing. He wants to hear it from them, from scratch. It's not like, oh dad, come on. You already know this. No. He's expecting to hear that satisfactory answer from his sons in full. So he asks as though he doesn't know, he doesn't expect them to know the answer. Ma ta'buduna min ba'di. Much after I'm gone. And then the other thing is min ba'di. See, ba'di in Arabic means after me, meaning after I die. Min ba'di means much after I die. When somebody dies, you'll find, especially with the Muslims, when somebody dies, immediately after, what do you find in the family? A lot of salah, a lot of dua, a lot of remembrance. Immediately after. But what happens much after? Much after it withers away. So he's not worried about immediately after. Immediately after there's the janazah, there's the remembrance, there's the dua, there's this, they'll remember what their father used to do and they're doing it. And they know about the idea of their good deeds reaching their father also, so they understand that and they're doing it. But later on it gets rusty. Those deeds become rusty. So now he's saying, Ma ta'budu min ba'di. Much after I'm gone, what are you going to do? What is it that you're going to be worshipping? And their response is beautiful. They say, Na'budu ilahaka wa ilaha abaika. We're going to be enslaved, or we're going to worship and willingly enslave ourselves to your ilah and the ilah of your father. Your fathers, Ibrahim, Ismail, Ishaq, and all of them were one. It's just one ilah. There are different fathers, but they've all been enslaved to the one same ilah, ilahan wahidan. This message is being sent not just, these words are also da'wah, because the people that are listening are people of the book, who believe that they believe in the Lord, the God of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And he says, in the ayat, his own children said, this is the God not only of Yaqub alayhi salam, whose name is Israel, but it's also the God of Ibrahim, it's also the God of Ismail, and those are all your fathers. It's all one family. So this messenger has come within the family, he's still not outside the family. The criticism of Bani Israel, he's outside the family. He's not from the family. But these ayat are making sure that they understand the ilah is one, and still the family is still one family. It's still one line from Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ilahan wahida. And all of us, nahnu lahu muslimun. We are exclusively to him Muslim. Now interestingly, who's saying this? It is the sons of Yaqub. What's the other name of Yaqub? Israel. So the sons of Israel are saying that we're Muslims. Bani Israel literally are saying that they are Muslims. That's what they said to their own father. So when they are being called to Islam now, they are being called to what their legacy calls for, where it began. They call themselves the sons of Israel and the 12 tribes. Well, the 12 tribes started with their 12 fathers, and those 12 fathers declared themselves Muslims to Yaqub alayhi salam. You follow what I'm saying? So it's that lineage that's being talked about. Now on this note, I want to make an additional, just a point about our reality now. Muslims all over the world, all of us, those of us that are Muslims for generations, especially. Maybe we come from the Arab world, the Africas, the Southeast Asian subcontinent, some parts of Europe, Turkey, etc. Many of us are Muslims for generations. And the world has changed significantly in the last few hundred years. I mean, even the amount of changes that have happened in the last 100 years usually take a millennium. From a sociological point of view, the kinds of changes that take place in 1,000 years have happened now in 100 years. And the kinds of changes that happened in 100 years have happened in the last 10 years. The world has completely been changed, transformed, and society is changing very, very, very fast. And these changes, obviously, they have an effect on our society, Muslim society also. They affect us. They impact us. Now, major things, we can talk about big things like, of course, more recently, the advances in technology, but even, geopolitically speaking, things like colonialism and Europeans taking over much of the Arab world and the Africas and the Asian subcontinent and colonizing the Muslim lands and leaving their mark and then leaving those lands, etc., right? Now, I'm bringing all of this up for a reason. I want to give you an appreciation of a reality we find ourselves in, Muslims find ourselves in, that's very embarrassing. You have Muslims whose upbringing is confused between Islam, that has been there for generations, it's confused between that Islam, and it's also confused between the influences that have come from other than Islam. And those influences also, they contradict our deen. Some of those influences, they contradict Islam. Not everything in the outside world contradicts our deen. Technology doesn't contradict our deen, it's the misuse of technology that contradicts our deen. You understand? Cars don't contradict our deen, it's the misuse of them. So, just because society has advanced, it doesn't mean it's become evil. It's the misuse of it. But our societies, unfortunately, in the Muslim world, we started looking up to our colonizers, or we started looking up to the West. Muslim societies, the Eastern world, started looking up to the West. And you know what? Let's be honest, there are things that we should be looking up to here. There are values that are actually genuinely Islamic. The idea, at least, relatively more transparency in government and, checks and balances and things like that, relatively. I use the word relatively, fully aware, okay? Far more than the Muslim world has, consequences for corruption, things like that. At least much more, it's not completely out, and it's a very corrupt society also, but far more than what the Muslim world enjoys. Even Muslim brothers, I know that they said, I can't live in America anymore, I'm going to make hijrah, I'm going to go to this country. I'm not going to knock on the countries, I won't tell you which countries they went to, but they went there for a couple of years, couldn't take it, and they came back. Now why did they come back? Because the injustices that Muslims are doing to other Muslims, they couldn't take it. They couldn't handle it. But I want to come at it from one more angle here, specifically here. Socially, within our families, I won't even talk about politics, I'll just talk about families. In our families, for example, the way weddings are conducted, or the way we carry ourselves in our gatherings, right? It mimics more non-Muslim culture than it does Muslim culture, the tradition of our ancestors. It mimics that a lot less. And so what happens in America, for instance, and even like places like Pakistan, India, even the Arab world, the youth, more and more, they're turning to Islam. More and more, some youth that were living a certain kind of lifestyle are turning to the deen, which is showing in their appearance, it's showing in the way they speak, it's showing in the way that they're not partying. They don't want to be part of those kinds of, social settings that their parents have become accustomed to, that they're used to. And when these people change, and the girl starts wearing hijab, for example, the parents say, that's not how we do things in our family. The Muslim parents are yelling at the Muslim daughter saying, that's not how we do things in our family. Our family is, we're Muslim but we're not, I used to say this all the time, right? We're Muslim but we're not Muslim. Right? We're not like those masjid people, or we're not those extreme, who's going to marry you looking like that? Take that beard off your face. Why are you going to the masjid, etc., etc. Like, that's not how our family is. Or what are you saying? We're not that Muslim for you? We're not Muslim enough for you? And it becomes like if you're trying to hold on to the deen and you're the only one in your family, or you're one or two, you're the weirdos and you're the embarrassment to the family, they can't even sit in the car with you, and all kinds of stuff. Which is pretty peculiar, because if you find an old picture of the great-grandfather and the great-grandmother in that same family, guess what you're going to find? You're going to find great-grandpa with a big old beard, and you can't even see grandma because her face is covered. That's the culture. So there are things in your past that you should be proud of, And there are things in your past that you should say, just like Allah calls it out. Your ancestors didn't know what they were doing either. Unfortunately, ignorance has entered Muslim culture in the last 2 or 3 generations. It has entered. And now we're holding on to that ignorance. If we're going to hold on to something, we have to go 3, 4 generations further back. That's what we have to do. You know? And it's kind of, like, I could speak on behalf of, for example, where I come from, in the Indo-Pak subcontinent, right? People say we want to hold on to our traditions. Now Muslim weddings look a lot more like Hindu weddings. Muslim weddings, literally, down to the music and the way the bride dresses and everything, looks a lot more like Hindu weddings. It's a tragedy. You want to be like your ancestors before Islam came to them? Right? The days of Jahiliyyah, that's what you want to be like? That's the legacy you want to hold on to, or the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam that you were gifted? A similar argument, and this is the last time I make about this idea of taking pride in what our real legacy is. We don't even have to go back all the way to the times of the Sahaba and the times of the Prophet ﷺ. That's way back. I'm saying even a couple of generations back. The Muslims were something, if you look at our history, was something to take pride in. Just to give you an example, look at the Muslims in Algeria. Right? The way they resisted the French. You know, the average age of Muslims in Algeria is very young. You know why? All the elders died fighting the French. And if you meet any elders from Algeria who were living at the time when they were fighting the French, they'll tell you all night they used to make Qiyam al-Layl. And they used to beg Allah to free them from the occupation of these kuffar so they can worship Allah alone. And they would this was a strong Muslim community. And only in 2 generations, I'd even say 1 generation. You know what's happened now? Go to Algeria. My father used to spend some time there. He was here for 5-6 years. Go to the average Algerian youth and you tell him, so what's your biggest dream in life? You know what it is? Move to France. I want your French citizenship. And you don't find the masajid are barely filled with youth. You have 1 or 2 older people there, subhanAllah. Those people spilled their blood so that their children could one day say La ilaha illallah. That's all they spilled their blood for. And this is not just the story of Algeria. This is the story of much of the Muslim world that fought colonization for one reason and one reason alone. They fought it for La ilaha illallah. We're very fortunate if you find people that are older that were living at that time, that can tell you stories of that time, how the Muslims were, and how they recognized the threat that was overtaking them, and they saw it as a threat to their La ilaha illallah. In India, Muslims were being slaughtered like animals, literally like animals. And 2 generations later, subhanAllah, a wedding's taking place in a Muslim country, and the same exact wedding's taking place in a Christian country, and you can't even tell the difference. And weddings are just one manifestation. It's just how we live our lives, where we spend our money, what's our biggest dreams, what are our aspirations, what our outlook on life is. It completely changed. Now the outlook on life, what you want to do with your life, for a Muslim, almost no different than a Hindu, no different than a Christian. That's a tragedy. We forgot what our life is supposed to be about because we forgot what our tradition is. So there's 2 things. It's the truthfulness of the deen in our time, but there's also the allegiance to this. We're not alone in this. We're not new in this. We're part of a very honorable, noble legacy. One famous writer would say things like, you should imagine yourself, when you hear these ayat, you should imagine yourself on a train and you're on this one cart and it's joined to other carts. And on those other carts are people like the Messenger of Allah, the Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'in, the previous Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismail alayhi salam. You're on the same train. You're on the same exact journey. You should take pride in that. And so, one of the things that we have to do as Muslims to hold on to our deen in tough times is we have to go back to those times and take pride in it. Take pride. We have to take pride in it. Just like these sons, they confidently said, we're going to be enslaved to your ilah and the ilah of our fathers. Ilah abayka, Ibrahim wa Ismail wa Ishaq, ilahan wahida, wa nahnu lahu muslimun. And we are the ones that are exclusively to him Muslim. But then look at the next ayah. This ayah was about, hold on to your legacy.